Welcome to the Daily Insider here on Vegas Insider. I am Kevin Rogers for Thursday, December 23rd, 2021. And looking forward to today's show. Vince Akins will join us coming up in just a moment. And Vince, who joins us every Thursday here during football season, has got all the trends for you. 2 college bowl games today. And then 4 NFL games we're going to go over for the weekend. And Vince coming off a 5-0 Sunday in the NFL. On Vegas Insider. He was 10-0 2 weeks ago, so he's been on a nice run inside the NFL. Good time to hook up with him and see what he's got for the upcoming weekend. So we're going to talk to Vince coming up in just a few minutes. But before we get to Vince, BetMGM, the king of sports books. New players only. Bet $10 to win $200 if your team scores a touchdown. Bet on any NFL money line. And if your team scores a touchdown, you'll receive an additional $200 in free bets. Again, new players only. Must be 21 years or older to play. And eligible in the following states: Arizona, New Jersey, Indiana, Colorado, Tennessee, West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. Full terms and conditions apply. That is BetMGM. They are the king of sports books. All right, let's get to Vince Akins. Vince, let's rock and roll with this thing. You're on fire. Got to get the fire extinguisher out for you. 5-0 this past Sunday.
Yeah, I'll take if we can go undefeated every other Sunday. I think that'll work for me. So
yeah, this could be your down week. You went 10-0 2 weeks ago, and then the week in between. What'd you do the week in between?
I think it was 2-5. Yeah, so you're looking the last 3 weeks. What, 17-5 on Sundays, if I'm remembering correctly. But we're looking to have another good week this week. So
67-57 on the season, plus 410. I would take that. That's pretty good. And you're heating up at the right time. All right, let's get to this week, and we're going to get to the NFL coming up in just a moment. Let's first do college football. We got 2 bowl games coming up today. Somehow, this one just got, I feel like, thrown into our laps. The Frisco Football Classic after we had the Frisco Bowl a few nights ago with San Diego State beating UTSA. Now we have these 2 old rivals, North Texas and Miami of Ohio, going at it. How close are you to Miami of Ohio, by the way? You're up in Ohio.
It's about 2.5 hours. So, it's part of the MAC is really, Ohio and the MAC are, one and together in synergy, but not actually that close. This is more Akron, Kent territory as far as the MAC goes.
It's pretty much Ohio and Michigan is the entire MAC. Like, that's it. Like 10 schools out of Ohio and then all the directional Michigan schools. But what do you have for this game with the Red Hawks and the Mean Green?
Sure. A couple of interesting trends here. Starting, let's look at the total in this game. You have there 56.5. Miami of Ohio coming off a shootout in their regular season finale, lost to Kent State 48-47. Really a high-scoring game there. So Miami of Ohio, interestingly, 0-9 on the over-under, so 9 straight unders. This goes back to 2014, coming off a game where they put up at least 40 points. So you think shootout, at least on the offensive side, the last week might happen again. Has not been the case for Miami with 9 straight unders coming off that big scoring day. So how Miami got there in that game, they threw for 405 yards in the loss. Miami of Ohio, this one goes back to November 2011, 10 straight unders when the total is under 58, and they threw for at least 330 yards last game. So big passing game, not a huge total, has led to unders for Miami of Ohio as well. And that 405 passing yards last game, that leads us to an interesting statistic here, looking at bowl games in general. Teams are just 20-37 against the spread in bowl games, coming off a game where they threw for at least 400 yards. So huge passing game, the last game of the regular season, or if it was a conference championship game. Their next game, just 20-37 against the spread coming to bowl games. So you might think about what's some of the reasoning for that. When you think about systems like this, I kind of think you have a team that tends to be a little more one-dimensional. Usually teams that throw for over 400 yards, you think of your very pass-heavy teams. Ironically, this was active with Western Kentucky, and they did not lose. So this was 19-37 coming into the bowl season. But you think about that kind of team, the extra couple of weeks to prepare for a team that's very one-dimensional, I think, is a good backing for the reasoning why these teams don't do very well in bowl games.
Now, North Texas, for a lot of people that haven't paid attention to them, Vince, they started off the season, they were bad. They've won 5 straight. Like, this team was 1-6, and now they've won 5 in a row. So they are definitely playing better. They closed the season beating Texas San Antonio, handing them their first loss. So that's also the concern going into this game. Was that their national championship, beating the eventual conference champion, UTSA? because they beat FIU, Southern Miss, Rice, not so, not great teams. But that's also kind of wonder. We talk about motivation is so big in these bowl games that UTSA winning that finale or North Texas beating UTSA in that finale. Was that it? And now you play in this bowl game. And granted, at least the good news for North Texas, they're not far from Frisco, so it's like a home game for them.
Yeah, I believe they've covered in 6 straight as well with that 5-game winning streak down the stretch. They've been really good we were on them against that Texas San Antonio game you mentioned. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see the kind of motivation here. You do mention a home game with Miami of Ohio traveling down to Frisco. I don't know that there's going to be a huge Miami of Ohio contingent at this game, so we'll see.
Just getting out of Ohio, I guess, for Christmas, just getting out of town. But let's look now at the night game tonight, and UCF in Florida. Now, I am based in Florida, so I know this is basically a drive game for both these schools, Gainesville to Tampa, Orlando to Tampa, not very far. So it actually worked out for the Gasparilla Bowl to get 2, in a sense, local teams playing in this game. They'll have plenty of fans there. But Florida has been a huge disappointment this year. Dan Mullen gets fired before the Florida State game, and now they bring in Billy Napier from Louisiana. He's obviously not coaching in this game. UCF, when Gus Malzahn's first year, I don't want to say disappointed. I don't want to put it on Gus, but their big quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, got hurt at the end of the Louisville game, so he's out, and the offense takes a hit. But I know UCF, it seems like it's a public dog here, but what are your numbers telling you with the Gators and the Knights tonight?
Yeah, I got a couple of good team trends here I'll get to in a second. But one thing that I've looked up that's pretty interesting for this game, you mentioned Florida, really a disappointing season. Yet they're still touchdown favorites in this game, despite being 6-6. Actually, in bowl games, I believe it's 18-6 against the spread, but whatever, I don't have that number offhand. Teams that are 6-6 and are favored by at least 6 or 7 points, if not more, in bowl games have actually performed really well against the spread. So you think, disappointing year, 6-6, sneaking out a bowl game, yet being favored. Usually in that case, it's a big time program like Florida. Those teams have actually performed fairly well in bowl games, something to watch tonight. Along with a couple of team trends here we got from Florida, not going back too far. To begin with, Florida 7-0 against the spread. This one goes back to September 2017, coming off a win where they scored less than 31 points. So they won their finale against Florida State, 24-21, a little bit of a lower scoring game there, bring 24 points in the win. That's led to some success the next game with their defense riding to the win. Also, in similar fashion, Florida 9-1-1 against the spread. This one goes back to 2018, coming off a win where they forced at least 3 turnovers. So actually both teams in that Florida State slugfest there committed 3 turnovers in that game. But their defense forcing those 3 turnovers, keeping them to a lower scoring game against Florida State was really the difference in that rivalry game. They've performed well against the spread games following that kind of nice defensive performance.
Now, let's take a look at the NFL, Vince, and coming up on Saturday, you have the Browns and the Packers. That's the afternoon game at Lambeau Field. Colts-Cardinals is the night game. We know all about Cleveland. I mean, you're not far from there, and all the issues they had with COVID this past week. They still led the Raiders late in spite of everything with Nick Mullins in at quarterback. The Raiders need a last-second field goal to beat them. So Cleveland, that's a pretty good effort out of them considering all the negatives going against them. They're supposed to get Baker Mayfield back, get some of their guys back this week. They go to Green Bay. Packers coming off that, I don't want to call it a last-second win because they were comfortably over Baltimore. Ravens had a chance to win at the end, but the Packers held them off. But Green Bay, we know they've been on fire this whole year since that opening week loss to New Orleans. Cleveland now a nice dog, and the Browns in a little bit of desperation mode.
Sure, yeah. You mentioned that last week's game. It was an interesting one. Actually, a lot of our numbers really liked the Raiders early in the week, but that was one we ended up staying away from when that shifted to the Raiders being road favorites, and a lot of the uncertainty going into that game. And Nick Mullins, is probably as good as you're going to ever get for a third-string quarterback. He had been there the whole season, unlike a Garrett Gilbert that was brought in this week to lead Washington. As always, we usually want to talk about the NFL here briefly for a minute. This is a Saturday game. We got some Sunday games. There's a lot of uncertainty coming to these games. We talk to you each Thursday. Last week, this week, there's probably as much uncertainty going into some of these games as that you'll ever see. You just see, Ian Book starting for the Saints, apparently, coming down with the last few minutes before we went to the show here. So, always, if you see value based on who's playing right now, this could be a good thing to jump in on. But, keep in mind that things may change before Sunday. So having said that, looking at this Browns-Packers games, a couple of team trends here. Starting on the Browns side. The Browns are 0-12 against the spread. This one goes back to November 2016 as a dog of more than 6 points when they went under their team total last game. So not the game total, but their team total. And last week, the Browns team total was extremely low in that low total game of 17.5 against the Raiders. They still, with their 14 points, went under that team total. Big dogs this week, 0-12 against the spread in this situation. On the Packers side, two nice team trends favoring them against the spread. First, the Packers are impressive 11-0 against the spread. This one goes back to October 2013, coming off a 1 to 3 point win as a favorite. So obviously the Packers were large favorites last week against the Ravens that got more than touchdown, about 9.5 by game time. Narrowly, you mentioned, held off the Ravens with that last second 2-point conversion stop to win by 1 point. So real close win as a favorite last week. They've done really well against the spread the following week. Also, so you mentioned, that game closed at 9.5. The Packers failing to cover by 8.5 points then in the win. The Packers are 12-0 against the spread. This one goes back to November 2017 when they failed to cover by more than 7 points, so more than a touchdown last game. And they were not more than 13-point favorites in that game. So we're not talking about cruising to win still as a huge favorite. Failed to cover by more than a touchdown, not that more than 13-point favorite, 12-0 against the spread, going back just 4 seasons here. So impressive numbers there from the Packers.
And also, too, when you mentioned with Cleveland, I mean, what a terrible hand to get dealt, Vince, that you're supposed to play Saturday, then Saturday. You get moved to Monday, and now your next game is Saturday. So you don't have like a Monday to Sunday situation. Now you got to turn back around. I know Cleveland and Green Bay is not far, but, you still got to turn around, play an excellent team. It's just terrible. But
I think, there's not a lot of the Browns still haven't been cleared either. So I don't know that's entirely clear who's going to be playing in this game. A lot of the guys went on the COVID list late last week. Jadeveon Clowney for one, plus there's some Myles Garrett's banged up. I think there's a lot of uncertainty around the Browns in this game. The short week definitely doesn't help that.
Yeah, especially if you're trying to get off COVID as opposed to, let's just say, you need to heal an injury. You can go out and play this. You got to clear something. All right, Ravens, Bengals, staying in Ohio, even though that last game was in Green Bay. But so Cincinnati, they blew out Baltimore the first time they played in Baltimore, and real statement game for the Bengals. We're here in the AFC North, and after the Bengals had lost 2 straight at home, grinded out win over the Broncos last week. So Cincinnati now, driver's seat in the AFC North. They got to take care of their business. Baltimore, we know if Lamar Jackson's playing. Tyler Huntley had a nice showing last week against Green Bay in that loss. What do you have here with this game as the Bengals now a short favorite? They haven't been good at home recently.
Yeah, that's another one of those games. Obviously, Lamar Jackson is going to make a huge difference in where this line probably ends up. I think this line might be splitting the difference a little bit. Tyler Huntley did play well against the Packers last week. So a couple of things. I'll start with one that we've mentioned here several times. I'm going to have a couple of competing trends and systems to this game, but I wouldn't want to go without mentioning Baltimore now 14-0 against the spread, going back to November 2017 as a regular season underdog. So we've mentioned it several times here. I believe maybe even the last 2 weeks. Facing the Browns in that backdoor cover late, and then last week covering handily that 9.5-point spread against the Packers. So 14-0 against the spread as a regular season dog. John Harbaugh finds a way, gets his team ready. Obviously, this is a much shorter line than what we looked at last week against the Packers. Gets his team ready for these tough opponents. However, on the other side, Cincinnati, you mentioned, blew out the Ravens back in Week 7, 41-17 wins, a 6-point dog. I mean, they covered by 30 points in that game. So I wanted to look at how teams performed, the second meeting of the season when they really covered against the spread the first time. So I isolated teams that covered by 25 or more points against this team, and they're facing them again in the same season. Those teams are 66-49 against the spread in the second meeting as well. So we've covered 57.4% of the time in the second meeting, even after blowing out in a 25-plus point cover. You blew out and you exceeded expectations in that first meeting. The Bengals haven't been in the situation where they've beaten an AFC North opponent very often and then faced them a second time. The Bengals have, for a few years now, really struggled in the AFC North. When they have, they are 4-0 against the spread, going back to 2016, facing AFC North team they defeated in the first meeting. Finally, I'm going to throw in one team trend on the total here. The Bengals defeated Denver last week in that low-scoring game and had just over 27 minutes time possession. So Denver still controlled the ball even in that Bengals win. Bengals are 0-10, 0-10-1, over under. So 10 unders and 1 push. Just going back to December 2018, when they're not double-digit favorites, and they had less than 28 minutes time of possession last game. So Denver, even the loss, won that time of possession battle last game. And that shows for the Bengals some reasons where caution play might lead to an under the next game.
Yeah, this game is really intriguing, Vince, simply because we know about all the close losses Baltimore's had recently. Harbaugh went for the 2 twice against Green Bay and against Pittsburgh, wasn't successful. And you say, okay, if they would have kicked the extra point, would they have won in overtime? Whatever it was, but obviously we'll never know. But they've been a really good dog. Like you've mentioned, you've said this several times in the show throughout the season. They've been a great underdog to back. And also the Huntley-Lamar thing is still up in the air. But Baltimore, though, you wonder if, you grab them again, or is this the one where maybe the Bengals handle them? That's what makes this one so tough. You say Baltimore's got to break through, but also the Bengals have confidence against this team as well.
Yeah, and this is one of those, I mentioned that interesting sort of league-wide system as well. I will say, teams don't cover as underdogs forever. Teams not going to, I'd be shocked to see if this trend go to 20-0 against the spread or something like that eventually. So there is definitely some competing factors in this game, and some reasons to think this might be the Bengals' time to get the Ravens, and they would really take control of the AFC North with a win here.
Yeah, big game for Cincinnati if they can get this win now. And it looked like their season was going kind of backwards a few weeks ago. Now, the Buffalo Bills, speaking of going backwards, they were in firm control of the AFC East for a while. And then the Patriots went Patriots and won 7 straight. Now, they dug themselves a 20-0 hole against the Colts last week. They made it 2017. Like they were back in that game with a stop. Who knows? It could have gone to overtime. Jonathan Taylor had that long touchdown run. Colts ended up winning. Patriots now, look, they're all right. Like that wasn't that big of a deal losing that game last week. If they beat Buffalo this week, Vince, you have the tiebreaker. You're probably winning the AFC East. If Buffalo can go to Foxborough and win, who knows what'll happen the final 2 weeks. But you're getting the Bills here as a short dog. No Cole Beasley. He's in the COVID protocol. What do you think here with the Patriots now facing the Bills for the second time in 3 weeks?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Particularly that meeting was just 3 weeks ago now. So recent, but I don't know how much you can take from it. I mean, I don't think you're going to be able to throw the ball 3 times in this game and get another victory. So exactly how much you can take from the Patriots game plan in that first performance, and obviously the winds and the weather was a factor in that one. I just want to note, I mentioned looking at teams that pull off an upset win or some things. Looking at the second time against the divisional opponent, that you can't really look at that with New England. Since 2003, that win against the Bills as a underdog was just the second time they defeated a divisional opponent as an underdog since 2003. The other one was against the Jets in 2011. So you're not going to be able to find any interesting trends looking at the Patriots upsetting AFC East teams, and really just not that many upset wins in general, based on where the lines have been for the Patriots in recent seasons. But now we switch to this game, the Bills being underdogs. I know I mentioned this one a couple weeks ago when they faced Tampa as well. Bills now 6-0 over-under, just going back to November of last year. 6 straight overs in games where they're underdogs. So pretty aggressive play. You think about that Tampa game, even though they didn't score much in the first half, I believe that was a game they didn't hand the ball off to a running back a single time in the first half. It was just Josh Allen runs, Josh Allen throws. If you think about it, as an underdog, they did play that aggressive style, throwing early, throwing often, leading. I think that's what leads to that 6 straight overs as an underdog. Also, the Bills 9 straight overs, just going back to December 2019 on the road, coming off a game where they covered by more than a point. So the Bills covered by 3 points last week, kind of won easily against Carolina, 31-14. That was really never in doubt. Now going on the road, they do tend to be a little more aggressive on the road as well. Those things go hand in hand with those 9 straight overs. On the Patriots side of the ball, one more over trend here. Nine straight overs for the Patriots. This one goes back a little further, January 2010. Totals under 52. They don't have more than 2 days extra rest, and they are coming off a loss as a dog. So you mentioned the Patriots not dogs that often. When they do lose as a dog, they tend to be a little more aggressive the next week. Even in games, generally, they've been favored in all those games, as the Patriots always are.
It's just nuts, that one trend, Vince. New England has won as a divisional dog once since 2003. They're never in that spot with Tom Brady when he was there. So it's always like, oh, my God, it's been almost 20 years, and they've only done this once. But obviously, Brady not being there, now that he's not there, they'd be a divisional dog more. But also, yeah, you did mention that in that Bucks game a few weeks ago that the Bills 6-0 to the over, and that one looked like it wouldn't be over until the Bills made that big comeback. But the Bills Chiefs earlier this year, that one went over in that Sunday night game, the Bills Bucks. So now, and again, you're not going to have this wind, this ridiculousness with the wind again. Mac Jones is going to throw the ball, so hopefully things get back to normal. You won't have a crazy game like that.
Yeah, and that's why I mentioned, I know that Bucks game, honestly, maybe shouldn't have hit the over, but I think the style of play that the Bills went with in that game was the kind of aggressive play that you want to see as an over better, where they're throwing the ball every down, taking some more chances, even though they didn't score much in that first half, and it took the late comeback to really get it there and send the game to overtime.
Now, finally, the Sunday night game, Washington and Dallas. They just played a few weeks ago in D.C., Maryland, whatever you want to call it. But Dallas was in control of that game. And then Dak threw the pick six. Heineke got hurt. Washington came back and made it interesting, but then Dallas held them off. Dallas kind of in an interesting spot here because they have played the last three on the road and now coming back home. Last time they were at home was losing on Thanksgiving to the Raiders. So it's been a while, but Dallas won all three road games. Now you're facing Washington. You mentioned earlier Garrett Gilbert. I mean, no disrespect to him. He's not winning a game for you. Like that's Heineke was in the COVID protocol. You don't have a lot of choices. They're up 10-0 on Philly. They lose that game. Now you turn around Sunday night, another nationally televised game against a division rival on the road. What do you got with the football team and the Cowboys?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Again, we'll see how many players the Washington gets back from the COVID protocol. It'll be a little interesting. They do still have outside playoff hosts. It was hard to get too excited as a double-digit dog for those. And, even if Taylor Heineke does make it back for this game, the Cowboys really dominated that first matchup. So a few team trends here. First, looking at Washington, obviously they just played on Tuesday, losing to the Eagles 27-17. Washington's 0-12-1 against the spread going back to December 2016 as a dog the week after a road loss. So road loss or the week after, actually a short week here, 0-12-1 against the spread there. Washington also 0-9-2 against the spread and have lost all 11 of these games as well, coming off a loss where they allowed at least 140 rushing yards. And that's noteworthy because their rushing defense really got tore up last week against the Eagles. Obviously, the Eagles have a great rushing attack, but allowing 238 rushing yards to the Eagles in that game. And finally, a little small trend here, but interesting. The Cowboys have actually only been favored by 10-plus points 3 times going all the way back to 2012. Those all happened in the last 3 seasons, so a couple in 2019 this season. Cowboys are 3-0 against the spread in those games as a double-digit favorite. Won all 3 of them by at least 15 points.
Yeah, and this should be a game, again, Vince, where it matters who plays. If Taylor Heineke is in there for Washington, I believe he got through the protocol, that makes a difference. I'm not calling Taylor Heineke Mark Rippon or Joe Theismann. He's not one of the great quarterbacks in Washington history, but he's definitely the guy that's been running the show this year for the football team. And you look at a guy like Garrett Gilbert, it kind of brings back to like last year. Remember that when the Cowboys had Ben DiNucci in, you're kind of like, you got no shot. Like, you have no chance to win this game. And that was that Sunday night game where the Cowboys could have covered as huge dogs. He fumbles at midfield. Philly takes it back. They get the cover, but regardless, I don't remember that game at all. But
I remember that
Washington,
one.
we'll see how they do. You remember that game?
I was on the wrong side of that one as well. Yeah, so that was a frustrating loss.
Just don't fumble the ball. Just hold on to it. And they lose the game. I want to say it was 13-9 at that point, and then I think the fumble return made it 20-9. They were laying like 9.5.
Like an 9.5 point spread.
Are you freaking kidding me?
Remember distinctly. And yeah, I know I mentioned earlier, but it sounds like Heineke is going to be back this week. But Garrett Gilbert coming in that has not played with this team this year, just how limited they were. And honestly, I think it was a little fluky that they were able to keep things within 10 points last week compared to at least a backup. Talking about Nick Mullins, he's at least been with the Browns since week 1. Compared to a guy that's been with the playbook for 3 days here. So that really limited his Washington performance. And hopefully with Heineke back, even if he's no superstar, does at least, open up the playbook a little bit and allow for a little more variance in this game, even if the Cowboys do look good as big favorites.
Eddie, I know we didn't really discuss, but any thoughts on the Niners-Titans tonight?
Yeah, interesting. Moving past that key number of 3, that this line's really moved in, or maybe back at 3 here. I've seen a lot of 3.5s, 3 with some juice. There's some interesting, really going to come down to, I think, the ability for the Titans to control the ball and how well that's going to be. The Niners have played well, have worked themselves back into playoff contention, really probably the driver's seat for the 6th or 7th seat at the very least in the NFC. Titans comfortable as well with their AFC berth, yet as home dogs. I think it's how much they're going to be able to control the ball in this game. It could profile as something similar to that 49ers Bengals game a couple weeks ago, where the 49ers honestly didn't play that well, but still pulled off the road victory in Cincinnati. Could be a similar kind of feel to this game.
Vince Akins, you could find him at Vegas Insider, coming off a 5-0 Sunday last week in the NFL. He's had a great month, and he's at plus money this year in the NFL. You could find his NFL trends, the gridiron angles, coming out this weekend on Christmas. So that'll be out on Saturday on Vegas Insider. Vince, thank you so much for the time. Happy holidays, and we'll talk to you next week.
Absolutely. Everyone have a great weekend leading into this weekend of football, and we'll see you next week.
All right, there is Vince Akins, SB Breakers. You could find him on Twitter, and he does a fantastic job with that. They dig up the trends. They find some interesting nuggets, I'll tell you that much. And Vince coming off, he has a 10-0 Sunday already once this month. He had a 5-0 Sunday this past weekend. So he's been pretty impressive in the NFL. We're going to talk a little bit about the NBA, and I saw some news about the NFL I got to get to coming up in just a moment. But before that, this guy, he wears the crown like a champ, and he's the GOAT. DraftKings Championship Series. Go to DraftKings.com. Score your seat to the Tournament of Champions. The DraftKings Championship Series is the ultimate competition of contest winners from daily fantasy sports, sportsbook, and casino. The one and only place you can compete in the king of competitions. The best of the best in each domain will compete for series supremacy in their own domain's Tournament of Champions. They'll have one goal in mind: win the ultimate crown and earn the title of the greatest of all time, the GOAT. That's right, our friend there. He's a dominator, and you can be just like him. Go to DraftKings.com for more details. So I saw an alert while I was talking to Vince, and apparently, if I'm correct on this, so Ian Book is going to start at quarterback for the Saints on Monday night against the Dolphins because Trevor Siemian is in the dreaded protocol, and also Taysom Hill is in the protocol. So Ian Book, who wore that gold helmet at Notre Dame, he's going to be wearing that gold helmet for the New Orleans Saints in a very big game on Monday night when the Saints host the Dolphins. Both teams at 7-7. And let's see where that number dropped to. I see it at some places getting down to a pick 'em. I mean, the guy's he hasn't taken a snap before. That's a pretty good Dolphins defense you're facing. On BetMGM, let's see if they took it off the board. Monday nights, off the board. All right, so Ian Book will start for the New Orleans Saints on Monday night against the Miami Dolphins. The protocol, it's a killer. It really is. All right, so now let's take a look at some other things going on in sports tonight. We talked about the two bowl games. College basketball, actually, you have a handful of games. Butler St. John's, only Big East game tonight. By the way, we talked about the Big East, I think it was yesterday, and how silly they were in granting forfeits with teams that if they don't have enough players to play, whatever the case is. The Big East rescinded that. The ACC said we're not doing forfeits. Big East rescinded that. The ADs, all presidents, they voted, and it's just ridiculous. There's no reason to have forfeits when you have this big COVID outbreak. No one's doing this on purpose. So Butler St. John's tonight, they meet up. St. John's laying 5.5 against the Bulldogs of Butler. And St. John's comes in at 9-3. You have 4 games of the Diamond Head Classic. And first game tips off at 4, Liberty and Stanford. Stanford laying 2 in that one. Northern Iowa and Wyoming. Northern Iowa's been bad against the number, but good as a dog. They've just been a bad favorite. Northern Iowa getting points today against Wyoming. That's the losers bracket. BYU and Vandy. They both won yesterday. South Florida and Hawaii. That's the 12:30 a.m. degenerate special. Hawaii laying 3.5 against USF. You have George Mason, Wisconsin tonight at 7 o'clock for Madison. Wisconsin laying at 11.5. George Mason's pulled off some upsets this year. Fresno State, Weber State. That's the other game. And Wagner and Fairfield, if you want some afternoon basketball. Fairfield's a decent team, and they're getting points at home. NBA tonight, whole mess of games. And then tomorrow is an off day before the 5-game Christmas slate on Saturday. Again, just about who's going to play. Atlanta at Philly. We'll run down the games quickly. Atlanta at Philly. Hawks have like everyone out. Trae Young is out. Clint Capella, Gallinari, Herter, they're all out. But the 76ers laying 10.5. Philly has not been a great team at home covering numbers, and Atlanta's actually been good on the road, and Atlanta lost to Orlando last night. Hawks be worth a look there. Rockets and the Pacers in Indiana. Pacers laying 9. Rockets off a loss at Milwaukee last night. How much I trust Indiana. New Orleans at Orlando. Mentioned the Magic and their win over the Hawks last night, but Orlando 7-25. New Orleans at 11-21. And the 11-21 doesn't look good on the surface, but considering how bad they were to start the season, that's not terrible. New Orleans laying 6. Pistons in the Heat. Miami lost at Detroit on Sunday. Now the Heat laying 11.5 after they just beat Indiana as a short home dog. So that's a lot of points. But Cade Cunningham also in the protocols for the Pistons. Washington at New York. And it looks like, now I'm seeing Dalvin Cook is in the COVID protocol for the Vikings against the Rams. Okay. Just keep messing things up. Wizards and Knicks at the Garden. And New York is 0-9, their last 9 off a win. And they just beat the Pistons the other night. They're getting, I believe, R.J. Barrett clear of the protocols. Washington laying 1. They've been off for a few days because they were supposed to play Brooklyn a few days ago, and that game got wiped out. So Washington hasn't played since Saturday when they won at Utah. Bucks and Mavs in Dallas. Luka's in the protocol too, but he's out with an ankle injury anyway. Bucks laying 3.5. Milwaukee hopes to get Giannis back for the Christmas Day game against Boston. Minnesota's at Utah. Wolves beat the Jazz twice in Salt Lake City last year. Utah just demolished Minnesota at Target Center earlier this month. Charlotte's at Denver. Nuggets laying 2.5 after they lost to the Thunder last night. Oklahoma City's in Phoenix. Thunder getting 15 tonight against the Suns. Suns get the Warriors on Christmas. The Warriors hosting Memphis tonight. The Golden State laying 5.5. Remember, Golden State lost to Memphis earlier this year in overtime, and the Grizzlies off a home loss to the Thunder a few days ago. Spurs and Lakers. This was a great matchup about 15, 18 years ago. Not so much anymore. Spurs at 12-18. They just beat the Clippers a few days ago. Lakers, the Lakers issues, 16-16. LA laying 1.5. And that one, no hockey for a while. They come back Monday, allegedly, as long as all these teams can fix themselves. All right, BetMGM, the king of sports books. Bet $10 to win $200 if you're a new customer. Bet on any NFL money line, and if your team scores a touchdown, you'll receive an additional $200 in free bets. Must be 21 years or older to be eligible, and also legal in the following states: Arizona, New Jersey, Indiana, Colorado, Tennessee, West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C. only. Full terms and conditions apply. That's BetMGM. They are the king of sportsbooks. Mike, thanks to Vince Akins for joining us, as he does every Thursday, handing out all the trends. We'll be back with you on Monday. We're off tomorrow on Christmas Eve. We'll be back with you on Monday. And Dave Sharapan will join us, as he does every Monday during football season, to review Week 16 of the NFL and also look ahead to the Dolphins and Saints on Monday night. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for tuning in to this edition of the Daily Insider. And as always, best of luck with your bets.